Firstly, I would like to ask a question. Is there anybody in the house who was born in the 60s? Wow, interesting. Okay. In the 70s. Nice. So that's very interesting. I think we have a balance of people from the 60s and very young people in the house, and that's great. People born in the 60s and 70s, I think after the session, I would like to engage you on certain things. Like, what were the conversations you were having in your 20s? Because I believe that right now, for we that were born right from the 80s to the 2000s, the conversation we are having is kind of different. We are facing a lot of things, insecurity based on where you are born or where you live. We also have issues that has to do with rising food, recently COVID-19, and the issue of climate change. So about 5 years ago, I was able to meet up with one of my teachers from high school who was born in the 60s. He was so passionate. He taught us physics then, and he was so good with what he was doing. He was so passionate about impacting knowledge. And in that conversation, he told me how he left his teaching job and later pursued a doctoral degree that enabled him to become a professor later on. He seemed so accomplished after about 15 years of experience working as a lecturer in the university. And I asked him a question. I said, is there anything you would like to change if you have the power to do that? So he looked at me and he said, Babatunde, I would rather change the future for you if I have the power to do that, because I'm satisfied with my life. I was so surprised to hear that. But it took me down memory lane, how education evolved in Nigeria, from when the Methodist missionaries landed in Nigeria, started the first primary school in 1843, to when the first university was created. That was the University College Ibadan in 1948. From then, primary, secondary, university schools in Nigeria has grown exponentially. But there is a big problem. In the words of Professor, which I'll call him Professor, he said, the educational system has not made you people future-proofed. You have not been empowered to contribute solutions to global issues like your colleagues in Europe and America. He said, those of you who made it out of the system and are thriving now didn't do that because the system handed it over to you, but because you worked extra hard than your colleagues in Europe and America. Education is one way by which we can reduce vulnerability to social challenges, climate change inclusive. And when I was pondering over the conversation I had with Professor, who is in his 60s, I realized that in order for us to really handle the climate crisis, we need to upskill when it comes to climate education. We need to empower young people. We need to create more opportunities for them. But most importantly as well, we also need to review our curricula. Apart from reviewing our curricula, we understand that through a report by LinkedIn, the 2021 report by LinkedIn, it shows that the demand for green skills is really growing globally. It has risen by 8% from 2015 to 2021, while supply, on the other hand, has just grown by 6%. So that's demand outstripping supply. Now, where the data becomes interesting is the concentration of all these green skills. In the high and middle income countries, we have about 37 to 31% of green skills concentrated, while developing countries like Nigeria collectively account for 18%. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's a very big problem for just transition. And how can we do this? How can we deal with this problem? Number one is we should try and review our educational curriculum at the primary and secondary level, and also upskill teachers to deliver climate content in order to create basic awareness among young people. And that is part of what my organization, Earthplus, is doing. We try to go to different communities, go to schools, to increase the awareness of climate education, awareness among young people rather, in order to reduce their vulnerability to climate change. In the lead up to COP26 last year, I was participating in a climate policy hackathon, and I conducted a research with a colleague from Tanzania. So in the research, we found out that the awareness of climate education in sub-Saharan Africa is just about 44% of the population, compared to about 88 and around 87 in Europe and America. And out of that 44%, just 56% have the threat perception of climate change. So that is showing that we have a wide population of people, a large population of young people who are highly vulnerable to climate change. So while we are reviewing curriculum, we also need to, as a second solution, we need to create opportunities whereby young people can develop green skills that will enable them to work decent jobs. I think that's also very important when it comes to climate education. And that is why we are imploring our development partners, for instance, the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Dutch government, to invest in upskilling, upgrading our universities, and also creating more opportunities for young people to acquire green skills. I am a beneficiary of the UK Commonwealth Scholarship. And since then, I would say that my life has literally changed. It has enabled me to contribute to the climate discourse. We have the Orange Knowledge Program by the Dutch government, and also other programs like that by multinationals. I think that we need more of these programs to focus on climate change and sustainability. So in closing, I would like to say in the words of Nelson Mandela that education is one way by which we can change the future. It's a very important tool by which we can change the future. And I think that's very important when it comes to climate education. So for all of us seated here, I want to see you as partners in progress. You are very important in working towards net zero together. So whenever you have the opportunity to contribute or advocate for climate education in the developing world, kindly do it. Thank you very much.